It occurred to me as that video was rendering that I may get a 2-for-1 on solving this problem. So again, I was confused on why we're getting this one. I know why we're getting this one. But let's say we went in even and filled out all the information in here. 10, don't date 10-year-olds. And then submit the application. I'm still going to get this first, the value blank is invalid. And so where is that coming from? It's enough to drive you nuts, right? Well, on our form, so on the dating application form, we have all these different fields that we're going to enter. But there's one field in particular that is hidden. And so, and it's application ID. Well, as it turns out, application ID is a required field. It's the key, but the user can't fill it out because it's hidden. And we don't want them to fill it out. And so we get this error that says you can't have a blank input for application ID. And so how do we solve that? Do you see the little dilemma? Hidden field, it has to be included. If we don't include it, it's doing that thing where it's creating new records every time we try and update because we're reusing this form. So it has to be included, but how do we get a number in there, right? And you might recall that the reason as we reuse these forms, what did we have to do on an edit? On an edit, we needed to go in and, let's see here, pull up the record and pass in that record to the dating application. Well, currently when we go to the dating application, we aren't passing in any record. And so we can solve this just by one little line, which is currently, we're just starting, when we go to that dating application, we're just letting it fill out the fields. And at the moment they click the post, that's when we go build that new application that's tied to this form. Does that make sense? So we click, it ties this info by all these ASP4s to the application. It submits, it creates a new entry, and that's how that's all submitted. If I need this application to have an ID in it, how do I do that? Because at the time, like I say, we hit this, how do I even know, even if I could put a number in there, how would I know which one to put in? Because it's an auto number field, how will I know which one I'm on? And so here's the little solution to all this. That's the dilemma. Let's give the solution. So in the home controller, instead of not passing in anything, all I do is pass in a new instance of a application. Okay, so now that will go generate a new application, and it will look and see, well, what was the last one used in the database, and it will give it that ID of whatever the next number is. And so then that application is passed into the dating application form pre-built. Now it's blank. There's nothing in it yet, but it's pre-built. It's a new object that's been created in memory and then passed to our dating application form by virtue of this line. And if this is bothering you, it's the same thing as saying application blah equals a new application and then passing in blah, but we're just cutting out the middleman because we're never going to use that declaration. We're never going to use that name again. All we're doing is just creating a new instance of an application. So we skip this step and just pass in the new instance of the application here. And so that's why that looks like this. Come on. All right, so we pass in a new instance of an application to the form, which will include our next auto-numbered ID into that field that's tied to the form as we hit it, okay? So let's try it and see what happens. And the reason I think this is going to be a 2-for-1 is because I was trying to figure out why our default value was not going into age. But that's because no object had been created at that point in time. Now that we're creating a new instance of an application, then per the model, the age should be 0. And so that should go into the form. Cross our fingers. Okay, let's go ahead and run this. Fill out an application. We get our default value of 0. And now, if we submit, we don't see that error anymore of whatever it was, blank was invalid. Because behind the scenes, this record that we've created does have a number. It's the next auto number in the database. So if I go fill out a bunch of information here, select a major, then when I submit the application, it will be added to our database. And it will only be added, so let's go back and fill out another application. It won't get added unless the model, all these things, annotations that we've set up in the model, all of those are valid, and then our home controller is going to check, and just maybe to finish off on this, let's put a stop there and run this and watch it work. So when I come through and fill out an application, submit application, at first it's going to say, is it valid? And is valid is going to be false because it didn't match some of those requirements that I had in place. So it's telling me if I hover over the model state drop down, it'll tell me what's valid or invalid. And so it won't, so if I step, it'll step into the else, fill up that view bag, grab the data that had come in that was invalid, and send it back to the view, right? So continue there, and then if I fill out valid information, back to Harold Green, then and select a major, he's got to be a computer science major, right? And then submit an application. Now, when I check the is valid, it's true, and I can go look and see, and sure enough, each of those items are valid based on what we told it. And so that's how we do form validation by the model. Now we can obviously do it on the client side too, and we probably will. But we can check it through the model and have this model enforce the rules. But regardless of whether we're validating on the client side before we ever come to the server, which is the better way of doing it, regardless if we're doing that, we want to have this check in place to say, before we update the data, is all the information valid based on that model? So that's model validation. Good stuff. Spencer out.